Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Andy's Witchcraft by me, Sacred Moon. I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. Now, before I jump into today's episode, I just want to give you guys a heads up that it is thunderstorming today, and I love thunder, but it makes horrible background noise for podcasts. So if you hear thunders and booms, do not be alarmed. It's just a normal storm. So thank you for your patience. With that out of the way, today's episode, we are going to talk about shadow work. I am so excited because shadow work is not only for witches, but it's for people of all walks of life. In fact, it's for humans in general. But there's a lot of stigma and misinformation because of the name shadow, which we'll get into, with people thinking it's demonic or people thinking that it's pseudoscience, pseudopsychology. We'll get into all that, but I'm also going to debunk all those things. So stick around and listen, and let's get into our practice of shadow work, shall we? Now, if you're a new witch, beginner witch, or just a beginner in life, you may be wondering what the heck is shadow work. Well, I'm going to tell you, shadow work is a method of improving self-awareness by working through past traumas, events, and emotions, as well as getting to know yourselves much better. So it's not inherently part of witchcraft, like I said, but it's essential for anyone to do, whether you're a witch or not, in my opinion. And the reason I want to bring it up and talk about it is because I had to really practice shadow work during my deconstruction journey. Find out why I had all these resentments and negative feelings of anger surrounding evangelicalism. And I had to deconstruct from my evangelical beliefs, my past behaviors during my evangelical phase of life. I was very pro-life. I was sort of homophobic, a little bit. I was one of those, I respect your identity, but, I don't think you should be doing it type thing. And now I'm a trans man and bisexual, so really we see how that is, where all homophobes are a little bit of gay, and I just kind of proved that saying. But I had to really forgive myself as well for promoting these beliefs that harmed others, and now I make it my sole duty to go kind of against those beliefs. I'm going into social work and working in the healthcare system, and I want to, fix the system in a way where it promotes equality for all, and a woman's health and abortion rights, but also, helping others. I want to help specifically people with addictions, which a lot of evangelicals think are like evil, and a lot of them do not. When they find out you are a recovered addict or recovering addict, they're like, oh, stay away from them type thing, and pray to God or whatever. And, there's not a lot of advocacy there for them to get the helps and supports they need. And I want to kind of help that. So in that way, I can make up for these behaviors in the past. But before I could get into that action phase, I had to forgive myself, and I had to practice shadow work. I had to get to know the parts of myself that I was not aware of. Why did I used to have these beliefs? Why did I deconstruct from them? Why should I deconstruct from them? Stuff like that, we have to work towards that. We have to understand our behaviors in order to go against them type thing. To simplify the process of shadow work, I kind of want to break it down into 2 stages. In the first stage, you have to get to know your shadow. So we're bringing it out from our unconscious mind to awareness, the front of our brain. And that's an uncomfortable feeling, but we do it anyways, right? And then the second stage, we integrate our shadow. We make it a part of us that we accept that we have, and we may always have it, but we can kind of use that for good. We can kind of use that damaged part of ourselves to strive to be a better person, to grow spiritually. So how do you define your shadow self, right? We're in stage 1, you're getting to know your shadow self. But what is it? The shadow self is the side of you that you tend to hide from others and keep out of sight. This was kind of coined by a psychologist named Carl Jung, and he came up with the concept of the shadow. The shadow is probably the most focused aspect of an individual, along with the self, the persona, and the anima or animus. These archetypes all derived from the collective unconscious. Jung's shadow archetype is kind of like Sigmund Freud's theory of the id. So in 1923, Freud theorized that the human psyche is composed of three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id was the primitive part of the psyche that was responsible for sexual and aggressive drives as well as hidden memories. So you could see hidden and these negative things like aggression and sexuality, which is a taboo subject in society and is often taken advantage of and brought to the extreme. So these are all these negative aspects. And so it's very much similar to the shadow, but unlike Freud's theory behind the id, Jung believed that not all shadow traits are inherently negative, and they can also result in creativity, And according to Jung, our shadow is the side of us that the ego doesn't identify with. It's the darker side of our personality that kind of goes against who we want to be, which is the ego. For example, being extroverted, impulsive, and fantasizing can also be parts of the shadow, and they're not negative traits really. But some of us as children are just taught that we should be quiet, timid, rational, so we view these traits as something that we should bury and we keep them hidden. Throughout the decades, the concept of addressing the shadow has evolved, and now modern shadow work refers to discovering these shadow traits, forgiving ourselves for them, healing from past trauma that may have caused them, and processing them in order to grow. Again, we're all looking for spiritual growth, and it's going to look different for everyone. So now let's talk about signs that you need shadow work. 1, you're a human being and experience human emotions. I'm kidding. Well, kind of kidding, right? Like I said, when you're human, we all have emotions, we all have behaviors that we don't like and we hide. And so if you have these things, then you need shadow work if you want to get over them, if you want to overcome them. But shadow traits that your shadow side might possess include anger or outbursts of rage, envy or jealousy, manipulation and exploitation, selfishness and self-centeredness, arrogance and egotistical behaviors. If you're obsessed with appearance or how other people see your appearance, or you're dependent on praise, so you're very codependent. If you're intolerant towards others, if you're judgmental or defensive, if you're overly competitive, or if you're stubborn, or like I said, even positive things that society tells you shouldn't be. Like if you're artistic and society tells you, no, get a real job. So you push that artistic drive down so you could get a quote unquote real job. That's an example. And that's an example of your shadow self. It's artistic. So there's, again, positive things as well. But a lot of us struggle more with the negative stuff. And so if you show these negative emotions and you struggle with regulating them or letting them go, then you may need shadow work to help you do that. If you frequently experience any of the following, you may also need shadow work. So if you tend to self-sabotage, if you're emotionally reactive, if you repeat patterns of abuse or self-sabotage again, feeling stuck, if you have difficulties with intimacy, if you have black and white thinking, so things are either really good or really bad and there's no in between, if you experience repetitive triggers, or if you are a person who tends to project and say that other people have these traits that you really have, then you may need shadow work. So why is shadow work important now? Okay, so you're learning about, okay, so I need shadow work. I know what shadow work is, but like why? Why do I really need to do it? Learning about who you are as a person and how you acquired your toxic traits and how to work through them is so rewarding and useful. The goal of shadow work is so that you can forgive yourself for your shadow traits and come to realize why you have these less desirable attributes. You accept the sides of yourself that you might have kept hidden in the past, and you move on to a much happier, more accepting mindset. By suppressing our shadow selves, we're not learning to work through our issues, and we're not going to grow as human beings. We just allow our traits to fester and until it bursts, lashes out. Shadow work helps us learn who we really are, not who we want to be, not who society tells us to be, who we are. And we can grow and reach true self-acceptance of who we are. It is self-care. It's self-care to be yourself when everybody tells you to be someone else. You're going against that. And that's why we need it. We need you for you, not for what anybody else expects you to be. But on top of that, there's many psychological benefits to shadow work, like improved self-esteem and self-acceptance. You have a holistic sense of self. You strengthen your relationships with others. You learn healthy coping mechanisms and how to set boundaries. You develop the ability to confront regrets, and you stop negative self-talk. So for witches especially, shadow work is really important because it helps you align with your true self and personal code of ethics. So especially if you're on your deconstruction journey, you learn again, what do I really believe? Do I really agree with what this church is telling me, or what that church is telling me, or what this religion is telling me, or what that religion is telling me, or what this synagogue is telling me, or what that mosque is telling me? Do I agree? Do I disagree? Why do I disagree? And what do I really believe? It just really helps you understand the difference between due and undue justice and your own sense of morals, and you get to grow. But a disclaimer is that shadow work's not really for everyone. Like, even though I say everyone needs shadow work, it's the way you go about it is going to be different for everyone because it's really, really uncomfortable. And you have to be super honest with yourself. And you have to work through feelings of denial. And you have to accept your past, which not everybody is ready to do. Not everybody is ready to say, my past happened and it's okay. And after all, this is why the shadow self has been suppressed and hidden, is because we didn't accept it. We didn't want to accept it. And because shadow work can reveal potentially uncomfortable and complex emotions related to the things that you have repressed, some people can't do it on their own. So you know yourself better than anyone else. Use your judgment. Sometimes you need therapy. Sometimes you need professional help. Sometimes you need a recovery program like I do. And, how you go about it is going to be different. But everybody should do some form of shadow work, in my opinion. Because everybody deserves to be who they really are. And nobody deserves to hide themselves. But that being said, after you do your shadow work, you should really take some time for self-care and positive self-soothing activities to keep you grounded and feeling safe and supported. Practice grounding techniques that can help bring you back to the here and now. For example, meditation or exercise or calling a friend or going on a walk or planting or gardening, whatever you prefer. A quote I'm going to end off for this section. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it's going to direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that's from Carl Jung himself. So we don't want our shadow self to take control of our entire lives. We don't want this. We want to take control of our lives ourselves. And that is what shadow work is going to help us do. So now let's talk about some shadow self symbols and associations. So if you want to do a spell to kind of work with that shadow self, or learn to accept that shadow self, or learn to let go of toxic behaviors type thing, then these are some ingredients you can include in your spells, and along with a list of deities or spiritual entities to reach out to for assistance if you want to. So the colors, if you think of a shadow, they're very dark. So the dark shades, not really colors, I guess, but black, white, and gray are very typical of being associated with the shadow self. And herbs and essential oils include mugwort, which enhances intuition and dream work. It can also help uncover hidden truths buried in the subconscious mind. So you can see how this will help bring out your shadow self. Rosemary, which is an herb for cleansing and protection, and it helps clear away negative energy and create a safe space for shadow work. Nettle, which is a powerful herb for grounding and strength, and it helps us confront our fears with courage and resilience. And lavender, which has calming properties to support us in moments of emotional intensity during shadow work, promoting relaxation and clarity. There's the rain now. Deities and spiritual entities that you can reach out to. Typically, deities of night or darkness or death are great for shadow work. So this will include Yahweh, Lucifer, Kali, Hecate, Achilles, Nyx, Selene, Thanatos, Luna, Nox, Nut, Khonsu, Not, and Mani. So those are all deities that you can reach out to should you want assistance for shadow work. So moving on from that, I'd now like to discuss the Bible and shadow work. Like I alluded to earlier, many Christians frown on doing shadow work because they say it's of the devil. And after hearing me define shadow work and its psychological impacts and roots, you may be wondering why anyone would be against this practice. And one of the main reasons that I found through my research that shadow work is viewed skeptically by some Christians is because they believe it's of demons and that you are attempting to interact with your inner demons. They also believe that the theory was influenced more by spirituality and the occult than science and clinical research, and that it evokes associations with darkness and evil, which seem to contradict the Christian emphasis on light and goodness. But I believe this is really a misunderstanding of the concept. Right? These individuals don't really understand the reality of shadow work, and that we're not even working with spirits, demons, angels, none of that. This is separate from it. It's separate from spirit work. And as Christians, Christian witches, Jesus witches, pagans, whatever you label yourself, shadow work helps us reconnect with our spirit team. And if you're a Christian witch, like I am, it helps us reconnect to God or Yahweh, whatever you prefer to call him. It connects them on a deeper level because we are gaining insight into our core beliefs and motivations. So I have a little quote here that was impactful from one of the websites in my references. And it says, "The ego wants to eliminate all humiliating or negative information in order to look good at all costs. Jesus calls this self an actor, a word he uses 15 times in Matthew's Gospel, though it is usually translated from the Greek as hypocrite. The ego wants to keep us tied to easy and acceptable levels of knowledge. It does not want us to go down into the personal unconscious, or in Jung's term, our shadow self. The shadow includes all those things about ourselves that we don't want to see, are not yet ready to see, and don't want others to see. We try to hide or deny this shadow, most especially from ourselves." So you can see how this quote kind of sums up the connection between shadow work and the teachings of Jesus in the Bible. How we don't want to act like hypocrites. And the only way not to act like hypocrites is to acknowledge all parts of ourselves, good and bad. And that is why we do shadow work. Engaging in shadow work can help us gain a better understanding of how we relate to God. And by accepting all aspects of ourselves, the dark and the light, we can find true inner peace and joy in our relationship with God. And shadow work can help us gain clarity about our spiritual path and find guidance in times of struggle or uncertainty. So really, in my opinion, shadow work is a sacred gift from God that encourages us to take a journey inward and explore our deepest, most hidden shadows with humility and courage, which are traits that Jesus really emphasizes us to have. Yahweh is best known for transmuting and transforming our shadow selves into our own more perfect good. He brings us, often through failure, from the unconscious to ever deeper consciousness and conscience. Shadow work, when approached as a conscious and intentional practice, aligns with the biblical concept of examining oneself in the mirror of truth and taking action to align with God's will. And like I've said, shadow work helps you deconstruct and find your own way and truth of worshiping Yahweh, should that be something you choose to do in your path. And by engaging in shadow work, we can cultivate true joy, peace, and connection with Him. So now I'm going to talk about Bible verses that underscore the importance of self-awareness and proactive transformation. We start off with Psalm chapter 139, verses 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Next, we have 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. Next, we have Ephesians chapter 5, verses 11 to 13. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. Next, we have Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. Then we have Matthew chapter 7, verses 4 to 5. Why do you observe the splinter in your brother's eye and never notice the plank in your own? How dare you say to your sister or brother, let me take the splinter out of your eye, when all the time there is a log in your own? Take the log out of your own eye first, and then you will see clearly enough to take the splinter out of your brother or sister's eye. Next, we have Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. Then Jesus said to His disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. And finally, we have James chapter 1, verses 23 to 25. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away, and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. So this is all about, again, looking within, being self-aware, and then taking action. And that is what shadow work is all about, guys. You know, we look within and we do something about it. We don't just sit passively. There needs to be some action taken in this case. So now let's talk about shadow work in Buddhism. So there are some differences between Jung's theory of the shadow self and the Buddhist interpretations of the quote-unquote shadow. the shadow is one part of the Jung's psychological model of the self, but in Buddhism, the self is an illusion because we are all interconnected. We don't think or act alone. There's always someone or something being impacted. But still, regardless of this, there are some beliefs that are compatible. And so you can integrate to your shadow work while practicing Buddhism. And in Buddhism, desire is the craving of pleasure, materials, immortality, and reputation. And in Jungian psychology, desire is manifestations of the shadow. So attachment and craving and wanting more and not being grateful for what we have and not being mindful, that's all because of our shadow. And so the basic Buddhist path towards dissolution of the self is to let go of these desires that do not lead down the path of compassion. So again, that does not mean that all desire is bad and all desire should be let go of. If we want the desire to forgive others, if we want to have the desire to forgive others, that's a form of pleasure, right? Because, you're wanting more. It's a desire. But it's a good desire because it's going to lead us to wanting compassion for others. It's the path of compassion. So we are therefore accepting the fact that we have these desires, which is the shadow self, and we're treating it with compassion and care. But again, we're not clinging to these desires when they lead us to suffering. So if you want more money or more pride or more friends or more, whatever, that's going to cause you suffering, because if you don't achieve those ideals, if you don't reach those desires, you're going to be disappointed and it's not going to be good. So how do we let go of a shadow self that is so intricately connected to us? Well, in Buddhism, the practice of shadow work involves unifying the mind. So we're not getting rid of our shadow self, but we're unifying the compatible parts of it with the rest of our mind. And what does this mean? Well, you can't kick out your shadow because it's a part of you and it's there for a reason. But if you integrate it into your present lives by letting go of negativity in a way that it doesn't create a separation or cognitive dissonance between your wants and your needs and your haves, then the result is that we retain the ability to express extreme darkness when it's the most compassionate or effective thing to do. But we are no longer at the mercy of the darkness. So the end aim of all Buddhism is not self-realization into wholeness, but it's self-realization into emptiness. We have to recognize and accept that our shadow side is necessary to become who we are, to show who we are. I now have some tips for shadow work before I dive into the specific ways to practice it. So listen carefully, because these tips can help alleviate any discomfort you may experience during your shadow work journey. The first is to center yourself. So before you begin working with your shadow, you want to be calm, clear, and you want to be in a neutral space. Then you are going to cultivate self-compassion. You need to have unconditional friendliness with yourself. And without friendliness and without self-compassion, you will not take a look at your darker stuff, because you're just going to be so distressed when you're doing it. Then you're going to develop self-awareness, which is the ability to observe and reflect on our behaviors, thoughts, and feelings and attitudes. And you want to develop non-judgmental awareness, which is the ability to stay aware of the present moment without involving the inner critic or other modes of judgment. Finally, you're going to be courageously honest. See and accept your insecure selfishness and tyrannical nasty parts, and be honest about it. Be willing to see the unpleasant attributes in your behavior and personality and say, I've shown these in the past, Now I know what to do better. I know how to improve. I know how to grow. And that is all that matters. Then you can let go of the past and move forward to your future. So with those tips in mind, here are some specific techniques and tools to use to practice shadow work. Well, the first one, like I said, acknowledge that you have a shadow self. Make a list of your triggers, understand what causes deepest emotions to come out. What kind of emotions come out when you're triggered? Write a list of triggers for anger, triggers for sadness, triggers for happiness, triggers for pride, triggers for ego, triggers for all sorts of things. Triggers for creativity, because like we said, creativity, if you suppress that, that's part of your shadow self. What brings out that shadow self? Then, if you want to, you can get in touch with a therapist and work through strong emotions. Work on your emotional regulation. A more witchy tool that I use to practice shadow work is shadow work divination readings. I love tarot cards readings. I have my own tarot card spread that I do to work with my shadow self. And I use the tarot deck. It's called Murder of Crows Tarot by Corrado Roy and Charles Harrington. And I'll also link some shadow work tarot spreads that I found online that you can use in the description below. But you can also purchase a shadow work reading from me if that's something you're interested in. And that's going to be in my Linktree link below to book a divination reading with me. But you know what? Regardless, you can find your own way. You can just ask yes or no questions with a pendulum, or you can do oracle readings, or you can do osteomancy, Any sort of divination where you are addressing your shadow self is good enough. And as a bonus, you can call upon a deity to help you on your journey with shadow work. I currently work with Lucifer and Kali as part of me working my 12-step program to overcome addiction. But also, I just work with them in general to build up my confidence without inflating my ego. So finding that balance between the two has been crucial on my shadow work journey. Next, spell work. Accept your past, your mistakes, your good and bad qualities, and you can release them in your spell work. Burn a paper with this list of everything you want to let go of. Do a cord cutting rituals to break ties with whatever doesn't serve you anymore. Bay leaf burnings are good to release, or just write it down on a paper and burn it on a candle, and that is your spell. Doing these things that have a physical, tangible indicator that you don't want it anymore. Doing a physical action of letting go of something that's abstract. And that has really helped me a lot in the past. So I definitely recommend you give it a try at least once in your life. Finally, you can get into the habit of journaling shadow work readings you do, or journal any emotions you feel during the day and the triggers behind these emotions. Now, here's a list. I have 4 sort of journal prompts that I use sometimes during my journaling for shadow work. So the first thing I have is make a list of things that scare you. It could be anything from like public speaking or spiders or being alone in the dark. And you can even do a spell to banish or repel the thing that scares you. And again, it can be physical, or you could even visualize, burning the piece of paper with your fears on it and letting them go. But again, if you're not ready to let them go, that's okay too. Because fears are adaptive. Anxiety is adaptive. That's why it's still around. There are theories that show a moderate level of anxiety is healthy. So you don't want to let it go completely, but you want to let go of their control over you. You control the fear. The fear does not control you. The second journal prompt: spend some time exploring your desires. What are things that you want but would never admit out loud? What doesn't hurt anyone but makes you feel guilty or ashamed? Write them down or draw them out. You can even do a gratitude ritual afterward to thank the fear for keeping you safe, but again, ask it to leave because you no longer need it. So, the thing that makes you feel guilty or ashamed, if you don't need it anymore, bye. Let go of it. Next, the third prompt I have: identify an issue that you've been avoiding. What are you procrastinating on? What do you keep putting off because it's too difficult or too painful? Make task planning into a ritual by setting aside a few minutes. Light a candle, incense, or whatever lifts your mood, and do the thing that you've been avoiding. And finally, write down any beliefs or patterns that are holding you back. Once you identify your negative beliefs, spend time working on counteracting them with positive affirmations or mantras. Take your fear and turn it around to make a mantra, which, by the way, mantra is a form of manifestation. And, make it into something positive. That's what the shadow work is all about. Taking something that seems bad and putting a positive spin on it. So mine is, I'm always afraid that I'm going to be broken forever, that I'm going to be hurt and I won't heal. But my mantra is, I am healed, body and mind, of imbalances of any kind. In the name of the Father, Son, and Mother Spirit, so mote it be. And I have this written on a sticky note and taped it to my wall so I can look at it, but it helps to heal me. Another mantra I have is, I may be struggling, but I'm not failing. Because failure is a huge fear of mine. So, I took that fear, and I didn't come up with either of those mantras. I found them online, but they're mantras that I use. So there you go. Thank you all for listening to this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it helps you on your journey of discovering yourself and being who you are. If you like this episode and you're listening to it on YouTube, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you listened on Spotify, give this podcast a follow and rate it if you'd like to help me out a bit with getting it out there. More ratings means it's more likely to be spreading to other people. So I'd greatly appreciate I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. And you could follow me on social media. I don't post too much these days, but I post a lot on TikTok and Instagram. I'll share stories and posts every once in a while and check my messages and connect with you guys, which I've done a few times. So definitely connect on social media. That's going to be in my link tree below. And you could book a divination reading with me, like I mentioned in this episode. I offer a variety of divination opportunities and pulls and spreads. So check that out. It's going to be also in the link tree below. If you have a video idea, a podcast episode you want me to do an episode on, like a podcast episode idea, that's also going to be in the link tree. Click on the Google form. It's called Video Ideas. Fill out the form and I will do the episode as soon as I can. Thank you for your ideas. They really help me motivate my research for future episodes. And if you want to join a server of like-minded witches, I own a Discord server called Crystal Caverns. You can click the link in the link tree below to join, and that will also be on there. And I'd love to talk to you there and connect, and we do monthly events, and it's really fun. And I made some great friends through the server, so I would really like to connect with you all. So definitely consider joining. That's all my announcements. Thank you for listening to my spiel. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Blessed be everyone. Have a wonderful day, week, month, and year.